Very good. All right. So tonight we're going to talk about animation in Photoshop, which is probably in the past, probably since version 6, it's been around. And it's great for doing quick and easy uh, animated GIFs, web animations, advertising things, something for social media. If you want to get into movie editing, I suggest Adobe Premiere Pro. It's really great, and you have a lot of fun with it. But there's some things that you can do in uh, animation in Photoshop. Now, the principle that Photoshop uses is the same principle that applies to flip books. You ever seen those flip books where you flip the pages and on each page is a different character or in a different position? As you flip it, the character moves on the pages. That's precisely the same properties that Photoshop uses to create animation, is frame by frame by frame. Now, there's two ways to get to the timeline. You can go into Photoshop, and you remember when we chose our workspace, we're in Essentials. If you want to use this for creating motion, you choose the motion default. And what it will do is bring up the palettes that you need for creating motion. It'll bring up the timeline down here and other palettes. We'll move that out of the way. Or you can just go to Window and choose Timeline. There it is. So what this timeline is going to do is to allow us to create the pages in a flip book. And we'll individually put them together and then play them in Photoshop. And Photoshop will basically show each frame for a quick second of time and show you what the movie looks like. So what I'm going to do is, now that I have the timeline open, I'm going to click here on frame animation. That's what we use the most. Your choices are video timeline or frame animation. We're going to use frame animation. As you get more advanced in Photoshop, you can choose the video one, but we're going to start with frame. And so if you click on frame animation, you'll see that the timeline is open now, and you have frame 1. The way this works is a combination of frames and layers in Photoshop. The frames will create your sequence of your flip book. Your layers will allow you to turn on or turn off items in that frame. So let me show you what I mean. Let's start off with something simple. I'm going to go here and choose the ellipse tool, and I'm going to draw a little circle. Okay, everyone sees that blue circle, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here in the timeline, and I'm going to add a frame. So now I have 2. They're both identical. Frame 1 and frame 2 have the blue dot in the same place. Now, frame 2 is live. So what I'm going to do is get my select tool, and I'm going to move this guy down a little bit. I'm going to start over so I don't get that white background. All right. I'm going to work on this layer. Create a circle. Add a frame. And then move the circle down. And you'll notice, if you look at the little thumbnails for the frames, in frame 2, the little circle is moved down. Frame 1, it's up top left. Frame 2 has moved down. And you can check where you're at any time by pressing the play button. So on that animation, which actually goes real fast, and I'll show you how to change things, it will switch between the 2 frames. It's playing the 2 frames. You only have 2 pages in your flip book, so it just keeps flipping those 2 pages. Underneath each frame is a little timer. They're both on 0 seconds. If you click the little arrow, you can tell Photoshop how long you want that frame to hold. So let's pick 0.2 seconds. So now when I play it, notice it's slower because it's holding that frame now for a longer period of time. Before it was 0 seconds, it would just flash it. And now we've said, hey, hold this frame for 0.2 seconds. And so that's what it's doing. Each frame can be adjusted individually. So if you want to hold this for half of a second, it'll hold that longer. That will come into play as we go in. So let's make them both 0.2 seconds. All right, so if we want this little circle to gradually go down to the far right bottom corner, we can add another frame and bring him down here. And you'll notice in your thumbnails, it's at the top left, it's down, and now it's even further down. So create another, pull it down some more, and another frame, and pull this down to the bottom. So now if I play it, just like a flip book, it will flip through these frames. All right, so we've just created an animation in Photoshop using these frames to cycle through at a speed we determine as it goes through. Now, if I wanted to change these times back, I could individually click on each one and tell it 0.1 seconds. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the first one, hold the Shift key down, and select the last one. So they're all selected. So now if I make a change to the time, it changes all of them to what I selected. So you don't have to individually change each one. You can change them globally by selecting them all and changing the time. So now, without any delay, that's what our flip looks like. So if you have a cat that needs entertaining, make this and put the cat in front of it, and it will occupy your cat for hours. All right? So does everybody get this basic concept of an animation? Now, let's say that we decide we're going to go a little haywire. Let's go back to the third frame and highlight it, and let's move our guy up here. Notice in the thumbnail that we've moved that blue ball. So now, when it hits the third frame, it's going to put the ball up at the top right because that's where we moved it. And if we came to the fourth frame and moved it to the left, that's what we're doing there. So that is the foundation of doing animation in Photoshop. Now, if we want to get a little more complex, we can do what I did here. Here, I took an image of a roller coaster, and I found a picture of a cat in a chair right there. So what I did is on each image, this is for you detail people. Each frame, I moved the cat a little bit. So if I play it, you can see that it makes a little movie. It's very basic animation. Now let's go back Let's create a new one. And let's move the zoom bar out of the way so I can see. Here we go. Print. All right. There are tools here that will allow you to make things happen globally rather than being so detailed to move your ball. In this instance, I'm going to select the ellipse tool. And in the next frame that I add, I'm going to move it to where I want it to finish up. I did it again, didn't I? Hold on. All right, I've started there. Now I'm going to create another frame and I'm going to move it to where I want it to end up. Now I could go back and put it here, 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 and spend a long time putting that together. Or what I can do is I can select them both. I hold Shift and select the other one so they're both selected. And right here, this icon is called a tween. And by selecting that, it's going to say, how many frames do I want to add between the first and the second to make the motion? And let's choose 6. And click OK. Now what Photoshop has done for you is automatically position the blue ball between the first position and the last position to make it a fluid motion. So that saves you a lot of time. And I'll go to a new So I have inserted a picture of a car here on the layer. And if I move it just so the front bumper is showing and create a frame animation, and then I add another movie frame and I move my little guy over here, I select them both, go to my tween and say, hey, Photoshop, would you move my image across in a sequence of 6 frames? And you'll see that it makes my car go through the frame. Now, the fun thing is you can say, all right, on frame number 4, I want the car to stop for a minute. So I'm going to tell frame number 4, hey, hold it for 2 seconds. So it's going to go fast, but when it hits frame number 4, it's going to hold it for 2 seconds. And then it's going to continue. Let's see what that looks like. So it's going to zoom and hold that frame for 2 seconds and then continue on. So you can tell Photoshop how you want this staggered or timed. Okay, so now let's say we want to add a word. So I'm going to go back over here to my layers. And we're going to type the word car. Let's make it big so we can see it. Make it even bigger. Let's make it 90. Okay, so we'll put our word car here. Now, the problem is if we click our play button, the frame I was on when I moved it is the frame that shows it. So here's what we want to do. We want to make a global change. I'm going to select the first and the last, make them all selected, and move car here. Now, car should be in the same place each time. Now, let's say that we don't want car to show up till it stops. So we're going to go click frame number 1, and we're going to go up to our layers and click off the eye. So now car doesn't show up in that frame, or that frame, or that frame. But it will show up in that frame because we turned it on. If you want to hide something on a frame, click the eye off. If you want it to show on a frame, click the eye on. So now, so it's a combination of frames and layers that will allow you to make this animation work. All right, so let's talk about how do you save this thing. There's a couple ways to save your animation. Let's save this animation. We've decided that this is perfect. This is our award-winning animation that we're going to save. There's two ways to save it. One is an animated GIF, which you're going to use for web purposes. You can also save it as a movie. First one we're going to do is an animated GIF for web. So we're going to go to File, Export, and choose Save for Web Legacy. This is going to allow us to save our animated piece as an animated GIF. So I'm going to choose Save for Web. And we'll get a dialog box. And it allows us to, let me move this out of the way. You want to make sure that GIF is selected. If you choose JPEG, your animation won't work. You have to choose GIF. Just like that commercial, choose GIF. So in the animation mode, you'll see here's your animation palette down here. And there's a play button. And so you can tell it how many times you want it to repeat. Do you want it to go just once or forever or 3 times? Let's do 3. Okay, so it's going to go 3 times. Let's change the size. Right now it's 2550 by 3300. Let's do a more web-friendly size. Let's do 600 by 776. Okay. There we go. Let's test it again. Thing looks good. Again, we're going to change it back to 3 times. Test that. 1, 2, 3. There we go. All right, so now we're going to save it. And let's save it as ball. Now to test it, what you want to do is open it with a web browser. So we're going to open it with Google Chrome, and there you go. That's how your animation looks in the web browser. 1, 2, 3. Remember, we told it to only go 3 times, and that's what it's doing. The other option that you can have.
We didn't get to see it in the web browser.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll do that again. Hold on. Stop share. All right. Is that showing for you? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
So this is in the web browser. So I've opened it in the web browser, and it's showing you what it would look like on a web page. If I wanted to make this into a movie, let's say this is so awesome I want to put it on YouTube, then I would go to File, Export, and choose Render Video. So Photoshop recognizes that this is an animation. So it's going to ask you, if you choose Render Video, what do you want to call it? Let's call it Ball. Where do you want to save it? The format, use the defaults. You can do that. Let's change this. Oh, let's leave that alone. Frame rate, generally 30 is the default. 24 is also a standard frame rate. And that's the number of frames that show up in a second. So at 0 seconds, if you have your frame at 0 seconds, it will show 24 of those in a second. You say that's good. Render. And then Photoshop will tell you that it's rendering the video because this is small, it's pretty fast. And here's your Ball MP4. So we'll open that and stop share and share. Here's QuickTime. So now we're going to play our movie. Now the thing to remember is that your movie is not going to do it several times. It's going to do it once. It's going to go through the frames. So that's your movie. That's how it renders it. So to give you an idea of how this works, I'm going to open this cat one with Chrome. So there's the animation in GIF form that I made with the cat. I made it in 10 seconds, so don't judge, but I wanted to give you an idea of what it was like, so what you can do. So that's the animation in GIF form. Let me open the MP4. Move this out of the way and share with you a little bit here. And then here's the movie version. Goes once. So there's 2 ways to export the animation in Photoshop. There's animated GIF, and there is MP4 movie. Now, if you want to be advanced, you can actually import a video clip into Photoshop and tell it to turn that video into frames. And it will separate that movie into frames like this. So this is really advanced, but for those of you who have a knack for this, you can have a movie clip in frames and you can add things in Photoshop. So if you want to have someone wearing cool sunglasses, you can put sunglasses on them in your video clip. You can give someone a lightsaber. So if they're swinging their arm, you can add a layer and put a lightsaber in the layer and have it follow along. Lots of things you can do, but that's a little more advanced. Probably a Photoshop 2 class, I would imagine we'd do that. But for this, the extra credit assignment is for you to make an animation of 8 to 10 seconds, something about you. Some people have done a video of the time they shot the game-winning basket, or they fell off a skateboard and down a hill, or things like that. Something very basic, but just to get the idea of how this works. It's Thanksgiving week. I don't want you spending a lot of time on this. It's extra credit. So do what you can, learn it, enjoy it. There's a lot of videos up for you. There's also something that you can do. Find it. And it's called sprites. Now, sprites are images that people have put online for you to use. And there's a link in the module that takes you to a Google search page. And what these are characters that are drawn in different configurations. So for example, here's a little dude walking along, turning, bending, pushing. In Photoshop, you can cut these out and place them in the order that will make the person walk, turn around, however you want to do it. They're called sprites. So there's lots of sprite pages available if you want to play with those.
I do have a question
Sure.
on the animation thing. You said you wanted it to be something that reflects our life. You want us to use a picture of ourselves, or?
No, for example, if you were driving a car and crashed into a wall, just have a car crash into a wall. It doesn't have to be you.
Okay.
So here's some things to look at: timeline animations, understanding the video timeline. Here's an example. Here's some sprite sheet examples. These videos will cover everything we covered tonight. Here's the assignment, extra credit for 9 points. Telling an animated story about you. Remember, the more frames that you have, the larger your file size is going to be on an animated GIF. So if you want to avoid large file sizes, you want to do that. And then you want to submit a draft of your project 3. And then we go to modules and go to week 9. Here's week 9. There's nothing there of import other than congratulations. Upload your composite project. And then take the final exam. There's 2 attempts. You'll only need 1. I hope that this class was valuable for you. I prefer face-to-face, obviously, because I can cover so much more. I know that it's really difficult to give you these ideas and then, all right, go handle it, and not be there to help you. But you're all doing really well, so I'm not worried about any of you. Is there anything that anybody wanted to learn that you're hoping we would have covered that we haven't?
Tips on restoring old photographs.
Okay, restoring old photographs, use the same tools that we did for retouching. Share the screen here. All right, so here's a damaged photograph, and you're going, there's no way. Here's the things that you're going to do. You're going to use the same tools that you do with retouching a photo. The clone stamp tool, the healing brush, and also a little bit of surgery here and there. For example, if you have a person whose ear is damaged, you take the good ear, copy it, paste it, flip it, and move it over. So you can take body parts that exist that are good and duplicate them. So watch how the spot healing brush works on these tears. You want to make your brush just a little bit wider than the damage. And if I scroll down here, ta-da. Go through here. And I'll just start repairing this damage. Because what Photoshop does is it looks at the pixels on either side of the spot healing brush and uses the technology to fix or repair that damage. So on the face, I'll go a little bit here, here. Pretty scary, huh? Pretty, this is pretty amazing. Now, just like you use layers to airbrush, you would do the same thing here for some damage. Let me see how much I can get away with using the spot healing brush. Okay, so let's see what it does to the hair here. Let's go through here. Pretty good. A little bit on the nose here. So what I'm going to do is you would see that on her face, there is skin here and hair here. I don't want to do one major swoop. I just want to do the skin first. Back it off, not so much. And the hair. So now in this delicate area, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And I'm going to start using, let's use, the clone stamp tool. So we can choose this good skin here, hold down the option key and click, and you'll see that it will bring that skin over and heal that. Click and load, bring it over here. So use these tools to kind of go through and fix things that the spot healing brush won't do. Curious as how this will work. Yeah, not too good. So another option that you can do is zoom in. And that's where you're going to get really close with the spot healing brush. And move that over. Now, sometimes what you can do is use the patch tool to go through here, make a selection, and move this to incorporate part of the skin. So right now I'm over the damage. But what I'm doing is saying, hey, could you patch this area with skin from over here by moving to the right? And it'll do that for you. The same thing if I go around here and say, would you patch it with skin from up here? So this takes a lot of detail work. And I will tell you right off the bat, I am not a detail person. This drives me crazy. So I've done some projects, but it took me a long time. But there are students that do it really fast because they're attuned to it. So if this is something you like to do, then I recommend that you practice with this. There's lots of damaged photos on the internet you can practice with. But I would say 9 times out of 10, the spot healing brush tool is the one that you'll use to repair most of your damage. All right, everybody, thank you very much.